Senator Joe Lieberman has been representing Connecticut as a U.S. Senator for more than 2 decades. Now in his 4th and final term, he recently sat down with the Courant's Daniela Altimari in his Capitol office to talk about the days to come.
That just came from a meeting. I'm trying to work on yet another bipartisan agreement on debt reduction. So, but it's hard. I'm realistic now. I've been here 23 years, and it's more than realism. If you just keep your eyes and ears open, you know how difficult it is to get politically difficult things done. Although I have the feeling now, counterintuitive to traditional politics, that some of the most popular things we could do in Congress are things that used to be thought of as politically risky, like getting together and adopting a budget debt reduction program that cuts spending and raises taxes on wealthier people. I mean, it's just, so we'll see. So that's number one. I have a couple of goals that come out of my, particularly my committee work. Well, let me say sort of 1A in terms of the economy, and it also relates to my interest in national security, is to try to do the best I can through my membership on the Armed Services Committee to protect some of the defense programs that are important to Connecticut's economy, and that in recent years, even in the tough years, have constituted a reliable base of jobs. I'm speaking of big contractors like Electric Boat and Sikorsky and Pratt & Whitney, but also the less visible but quite large network of subcontractors and vendors in the state who basically depend on the big defense contractors for their own livelihood. So that's the most direct thing I think I can do for the state. The other two quickly that are committee priorities for next year are a cybersecurity bill. That's without giving a long speech about it, our businesses are constantly being attacked either by foreign countries to steal industrial secrets or actually to steal money from banks and the like. But of course, my worry as the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, senior member of the Armed Services Committee, is that we can be attacked. Our civilian cyber infrastructure can be attacked by an enemy instead of an enemy wanting to having to attack us by air or sea.
Senator Blumenthal was talking about the same thing this morning.
Was he good?
Yeah.
So we reported a bill out of committee, out of our Homeland Security Committee. It's a good bill. I mean, the main thing is to create a series of cooperative relationships between the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency, the NSA, which is basically the kind of electronic intelligence branch of our government, and create language that authorizes them to work with the private people who own the energy grid, the financial infrastructure, the transportation grid, and to put some requirements in there that the most critical infrastructure, as designated cyber infrastructure, has to meet certain standards set by the Department of Homeland Security. In other words, a lot of these companies that own the infrastructure are doing things to protect themselves and us, but some are not, and therefore we have to require them to do that. So that's probably the biggest thing. The other one also came out of my committee, and it's different, but it's a reform of the United States Postal Service. The Postmaster General has told us that if we don't give him some of the authority that's in this bill, he's going to he won't have enough money to operate the Postal Service sometime next summer, and we'll have to begin to reduce operations. Now, you know, the Postal Service is in the Constitution. It's an iconic American institution, but we got to make some tough decisions. It lost $10 billion this year. So those are a couple of them. You know, I wish that I could say that something big and good would happen on energy independence, maybe, but you know, this has been something of priority of mine. But I think it's going to be hard to do it in an election year.
What about the climate bill from, was it last year? Or the year before? Is
Yeah.
That's not.
It's just not in the realm of possible. I mean, if you ask me what, what my biggest disappointments were, not only in recent years, but over the 23 years, I'd say the failure to help build a bipartisan consensus to adopt climate change legislation, which would also be energy independence legislation. So those are some of the priorities that I have for the coming year.
So you expressed some hope that maybe, despite, as you said at the breakfast, not a whole lot has happened this past year, and expressed some frustration about that. But you also expressed some hope that something will be done, especially on deficit reduction.
Yeah.
But is that? I mean, it's an election year. Do you really think that there's the willingness to?
It's going to be hard. It will take. I mean, unfortunately, one thing that would make it more likely is if the attempts by the Eurozone countries to stabilize their economies fail, and then Europe goes into some kind of drop, let's put it mildly that way. That will affect our economy and maybe draw forth, maybe shake people up enough to take the kinds of risks that people have to take. The other thing, see, I think sometime next year, because of this sequester business that cuts defense and non-defense discretionary spending in devastating ways, that we're going to actually adopt maybe not a $4 trillion additional debt reduction plan, but I'd say at least 1.2 trillion, enough to stop the sequester from going into effect on January 1st of 2013. But if people don't talk about this much, but I'll talk about it openly to you, of course. And most people around here think that's not going to happen until after the election in a lame duck session. As I said briefly, I think yesterday, I also wonder whether at some point there's going to be a bipartisan majority that's going to say, hey, the public thinks so ill of Congress and the federal government. Maybe the best thing we can do, and this will be particularly people who are running this year, is to get together and get something done to reduce the debt. And so I'm not kidding myself. The odds are against it before the election, but it could happen for that set of reasons.